Hi everyone, my name is Tyler, and in today's lesson, I'm going to be teaching you about the simple past tense in English. This is a very important tense to learn because it will allow you to express yourself fully in English and have other people understand the exact context of what you're talking about and when it happened. So, what is the simple past tense? The simple past tense is used to talk about events that have already occurred and ended. So, for example, I can say, I created this lesson 1 week ago. It was in the past, it's over, so it's in the past tense. If I say I create lessons every day, I'm speaking in the present, but I'm saying I created it last week. So it's used to speak about things that happened in the past. So how do we form the simple past tense? We form the simple past tense by adding ed, d, or ied to the end of regular verbs. Okay? Now, we'll start with the ed examples. So, for example, the verb walk. In the past tense, it transforms into walked. Wait transforms into waited. I waited in line for 15 minutes. That's in the past. Cover becomes covered. Cook becomes cooked. Ask becomes asked. And learn becomes learned. Now, as you'll notice, I wrote these letters in parentheses next to the verbs in the past tense. One mistake that I constantly hear when people are learning the past tense in English is that they assume all of these words are pronounced in the same way because they all end in ed. But that's not the case. They basically end in 3 different sounds. T, t, id, id, or d, d. So for example, someone learning English might see the word waited and then think, okay, so it's pronounced walked, covered, waited, asked. That's not correct. They're different. It depends on the word. So for walked, it ends in a T. Walked. The sound ends in a T, the pronunciation. Ask, asked, cooked, learned with a D, and with the ID, waited. So for the next rule, adding D to a verb to make it in the past tense. If a regular verb ends in E, add a D to create the past tense form. So for example, these verbs already end in E, so we only have to add the D. So for example, smile becomes smiled, love becomes loved, use, used, stare, stared, care, cared, share, shared. And if you'll notice with these examples, they all do end in the D sound, duh. So for the third rule, when regular verbs end in IED, if a verb ends in a consonant and a Y, remove the Y and add IED. So if you're familiar with vowels, our vowels are A, E, I, O, U. So a consonant is anything that isn't one of those letters. Anything that is not A, E, I-O-U. So, for our first example, try. R is a consonant followed by a Y. So we drop the Y and add I-E-D. Tried. Study, the second to last letter is a D, which is a consonant followed by a Y. So we drop the Y and it becomes studied, I-E-D. Fry becomes fried. Cry, cried. Carry, carried. Worry, worried. And for our next rule, if a one-syllable verb ends in a vowel plus a consonant, double the last consonant and add ed. So some of you may be wondering, how do I know how many syllables are in a word? Because we're looking for one-syllable words. An easy trick to use is to place your hand under your chin when you're saying a word. Every time your chin drops to touch your hand, that's one syllable. So for example, our first word is shop. Shop. That's one syllable. And we see that we have our vowel and a consonant, and it's one syllable. So for the past tense, it becomes shopped. We double the last consonant. The same way goes for stop. Stop. Stopped. We doubled the consonant, and again, this ends in the T sound. Stopped, not stopped or shop-id. Shopped, stopped. For the next example, plan, planned. Rob, robbed. So now I'll give you some example sentences that applies these rules that we just went over. So we see here in green, we have our present tense verb, and underlined, we have our past tense. She applied for a job to teach English. I stopped at the store to buy eggs. In the past, I stopped. We baked cookies yesterday morning. They traveled to Spain last year. So those are the examples of regular verbs. These verbs have written rules so you know how to transform the verb to make it into the past tense. Now we have irregular verbs. And with irregular verbs, the entire form of the word completely changes. So that's why they can be a little bit confusing. And with these verbs, irregular verbs, you have to memorize the past tense. So the first group of irregular verbs that I will teach you today are going to be the verbs to be in the past tense. So we already know that in the past tense, we say, I am, he or she is, it is, you are, they are, and we are. I am sitting in a chair right now. I was outside. So that's the difference between the present and the past. So I am becomes I was. He or she is becomes he or she was. It is becomes it was. You are becomes you were. They are becomes they were. And we are becomes we were. So I wrote some example sentences with the verb to be in the simple past tense. So for example, my brother and I were feeling sick yesterday. Now we feel fine, but we were feeling sick in the past. Last year, Elizabeth was in Mexico City. She went on a vacation last year. She was in Mexico City. Maybe now she is in Los Angeles currently, but she was in Mexico City. My cat was very loud last night. They were late to their audition. So these are all examples of to be in the simple past tense. And in English, there's only two ways to form it: was or were. It just depends on the subject or the pronoun. I was, you were, he, she was, it was, we were. Okay? Now, here are some other examples of irregular verbs in English that are commonly used. These can be a bit confusing, but the best way to learn them is just to study them and try and use them when speaking about the past as much as possible. So for example, go becomes went. So presently, I can say, I go to the store. But in the past, I can say, I went to the bakery. So go, went. Buy becomes bought. I bought a new shirt last week. Say becomes said. See becomes saw. Leave becomes left. I left my job at 5 p.m. today. Write becomes wrote. I wrote this lesson 2 hours ago in the past. I wrote. Pay becomes paid. Know becomes knew. Tell, told. Find, found. Think, thought, thought. Sit, sat. Run, ran. Speak, and spoke. These are just a few very common irregular verbs used in English, but there are many, many other regular and irregular verbs to learn that are very common in English. It is important to learn the rules that I listed today, but after a while of exposing yourself to the English language, you will see a word and you will just remember that that's the way it's formed in the past tense. So at first, it's very good to learn the rules and know why we have them, but it's really a matter of repetition. The more that you see these words in the present tense and in the past tense, you will learn how they're pronounced, how we spell them, and how you can use them. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this lesson. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you would like to see more English lessons in the future. And please let me know if you have any suggestions for future videos or lessons, because I would love to hear from you guys. Thank you.